So yeah, the Pugilist Fighter 2. Tom Sayers going to do a second part on it. Got a old write-up in an old paper, a paper called the Evening Argus. It's quite a local one to where Tom Sayers lived, Brighton, and going to go through it. So basically, it's about the plaque. They're going to get this plaque up, 2002. They're putting this up. Like I say, years ago as a kid, when I used to live around near there, I used to ride 5-6 miles up to the area where he was born. But now there's a plaque in 2002 here, and this is the write-up. So basically, the plaque is basically titled "The Plaque Erected to Honour the Prize Fighter." So Tom Sayers was born and bred in a tiny cottage with no running water in the poor area of Brighton, which was Pimlico at the time, known as Pimlico. He could not read or write and built a career on his ability to absorb pain as a prize fighter. Sayers rose from the humble beginnings to become the English champion before the publication of the Queensberry Rules, which called for glove matches in 1867. There was ones kicking around before of exhibition matches, etc. Jem Mace used to do a few here and there with what he called mufflers, etc. But yeah, that was the gloved era, 1867. And then you had London prize ring rules and Broughton rules before, and no rules. But I digress. So back to this. A folk hero, by the time of his death, more than 10,000 people attended his burial at the Highgate Cemetery. Now, this is 2002, now a blue plaque is to be erected in memory of the pugilist known by the Brighton Boy, known as the Brighton Boy, shall I say. Only 2 plaques had previously been awarded to honour sporting personalities. I presume they mean in this area. Cricketers W.G. Grace and Sir Jack Hobbs. Sayers will be the 3rd. I presume in this area they're talking about. They must do. Blah, blah, blah. It's about a boxing fan. Yeah, so here's the thing in it. So basically, let's go through what they're saying. So he spent more than 6 years campaigning for this guy in the papers. But again, we're more interested in about Sayers. So yes, a prize fighting had been a popular form of entertainment with the royalty and aristocracy in the early 1800s by Sayers. And this time it fell into a bit of a funny spell, like boxing does every now and then. Sort of even after Joe Louis, you know, you had Ezra Charles as a champion, but he didn't really, even as good as he was sort of living in that shadow. And then it was until sort of Marciano, people sort of got that excitement, even though they're cracking fighters. But anyway, I digress there. But yeah, aristocracy, it was popular with them, even though it was illegal. Later on, when we get to the C. Heenan fight again, basically it was illegal, but everyone knew it was going off, and Queen Victoria asked for her son to tell her the result, even though it was illegal. So it's yeah. So we're going to come back to this. So you had criminal elements were known to throw a fight, etc. Fighters like Jem Ward, he was one of the first to be done for that. But again, I'm digressing. So I'm going to come back to Sayers. Sayers brought a sense of dignity back to prize fighting. The son of a shoemaker, Sayers was born in North Lane, Brighton, in 1826. You've got North Lane, then you've got Orange Row and Tichborne Street coming off it. There's a Buddhist centre there now. So it's right in the middle of these 2 streets, really. But they say North Lane here, and the other side of it is Church Street. But again, I'm not picking holes, I'm just sort of explaining it, the area. He was the youngest of 5 children and spent the early years in what was known as Titchmore Street, just off Church Street, like I just said. He became a bricklayer by trade on the Preston Viaduct. Before rising to fame as a champion prize fighter, he got his first taste of bare knuckle fighting when he fell foul of a fellow worker, 6'3", who took the exception of some of his jokes. So I presume that's Sayers. Yeah, Sayers. The pair met on Wandsworth Common. That's what happened then. To meet on a common, etc. After 2 hours and 20 minutes, Sayers delivered an uppercut to the Irishman's chin, who went down poleaxed. It was the start of Sayers' 11-year career in the bare knuckle fighter, which took him all the way from rag to riches, life of poverty to fortune. I think they got his height wrong there. There's 5'9". I swear he's 5'8". But again, go with this report. I'm sure it's 5'8". And he was weighing under 11 stone, it says here. So the most he ever weighed was pretty much 11 stone, 1, 2-ish, yeah. But 10.5 stone he fought at quite a lot. 147's a little bit above. Sayers was dubbed as a little wonder for his ability to beat such larger opponents. Sayers, who often trained at the Plough Inn in Rottingdean, became champion of England in June 1857. He defeated belt holder William Perry, known as a Tipton Slasher, in 10 rounds. He saw off 4 challenges for his belt, so he defended it 4 times in an epic encounter against, in the end, it climaxed with an epic encounter against John C. Heenan in 1860. I've got to check these dates out. But again, I'm just reading from this report. Yeah, John C. Heenan, 1860 it says there. I can double check that in a sec. So, yeah, and he became a legend for this fight. It says here that Henry Cooper is something to do with the unveiling. I wasn't too sure. I know it's British Border Control unveiling of this, and yeah, in memory to him, John C. Heenan, known as the Benicia Boy or the Bay Boy, or Benicia Boy. So we're going to go through his career a little bit more segmentally, bit by bit. But again, let me go for that. So, although the early prize ring had been illegal, it continued to go as an underground activity as Sayers earned considerable reputation for a number of informal fights. Decided to try his luck at trying to make a living with his fists. His first contest as a professional was on 19th of March 1849 near Greenhithe, when he defeated Abe Couch. His next opponent was Dan Collins on 22nd of October at Edinburgh, Kent. The fight was interrupted after 9 rounds by the local constabulary. The fight recommenced at Redhill, but was abandoned in a draw as darkness descended. The two fighters met again on the 29th of April 1851 at Longreach, the results being a victory to Sayers. Sayers next took on Jack Grant for £100 a side, and the fight taking place at Mildenhall, Suffolk, on the 29th of June 1852. And For this fight, Grant had Harry Orm in his corner. Harry Orm's an old, yeah, so while Sayers had attended, Sayers' corner was attended by Nat Adams. Harry Orm was another bare knuckle fighter. He was a candidate for heavyweight champion of Britain, England, shall I say, not Britain. But again, I digress there. So Sayers was attended by Nat Adams. So Tom Sayers' next fight was Jack Martin, who was backed by Ben Cornt, another good bare knuckle fighter, known as the Tokar Giant or Big Ben. The fight took place on 26th of January 1853. Sayers winning after 23 rounds. So again, the rounds generally happened when someone couldn't come up to scratch. That was the end of a round. And then that rest, go and sit on their corner man's lap generally, who was on his haunch, basically kneeling. But again, so in 1853, Sayers challenged Nat Langham, otherwise known as the light tapper, more for his accuracy, not as a light tapper by any means, and his style. So Nat Langham, who, despite his absence of formal weight divisions, was widely accepted in England as the middleweight champion, and the fight took place on 18th of October 1853 at Lake Heath, Suffolk. This was Sayers' toughest fight so far, and a combination of illness and inexperience contributed to his first and only defeat. The Willie Langham gains the upper hand by temporarily blinding his opponent with frequent blows to the eyes. The end came in the 61st round, when Sayers was unable to see his opponent, who could therefore strike him at will, which was Nat Langham. So yeah, that accuracy, obviously he was, they were quite specific with their shots. They break their hands, hit someone on the skull, whatever. That's a broken hand. You've got to carry that for a long time. So they'd hit with insides, the palms, etc. But when they did hit with a fist, they make sure they're very accurate generally. But I'm digressing again. So yeah, the end of the 61st rounds came in the 61st rounds, and was unable to see his opponent. Sayers was still reluctant to quit. However, 1 second Alec Keane was forced to throw the sponge in, like the towel in today, to signify the end of the contest. Once his eyes were healed, Sayers requested a rematch, but Nat Langham announced his retirement from the prize ring. So still, Sayers had fought well, and defeat did not damage his career, only helped it. But his marriage to Sarah Henderson, by now she was old enough to marry without her father's permission, was soon in ruins, as she left to live with another man. To make matters worse, on top of the expensive failure to set himself up as a publican, pubs known as drams then, a lot to do with organising these fights. He had great difficulty, so he failed to set himself up as a publican, failed business as it were. He had a great difficulty arranging another payday in the ring. He had one further victory against a fighter near his own weight before taking a much heavier man. The fighter was George Sims, described by the Boxing Chronicle Pugilista as a civil, well-behaved, courageous fellow, ridiculously overestimated by his friends. The one-sided contest took place at Longreach on February 2nd, 1854, Sayers knocking his opponent out after 4 rounds. which was taking 5 minutes. Like I say, they're not 3-minute rounds, as you can see. Sometimes they put the equivalents of that, but again, we're not going there. So 5 minutes that lasted. So, but again, he started to challenge the heavyweight fighters. So at this stage of his career, men of his own size considered Sayers too dangerous to fight. So finally, in his desperation, he took a bold step with challenging the leading heavyweight. According to Alan Lloyd, the prize ring, Alan Wright in Tom Sayers, the last great bare knuckle champion, this decision was given by John Gideon. John Gideon was a gentlemanly bookie which, with influential and wealthy connections, he took a liking to Sayers after watching him fight Nat Langham and stepped forward to become Sayers' manager. He would guide Sayers through the most successful part of his career as the two men became firm friends. In convincing Sayers to challenge heavyweights, Gideon was breaking the convention. The convention, though it was never a formal rule, was that men fought others of their own size, and few gave him much of a chance against the highly regarded Harry Paulson. I'm reading for this, but there was others who did it before, but again, I won't go there. Mendoza, etc., even Jim Mace. But anyway, so Paulson was shorter than Sayers by an inch, but described as the perfect Hercules. His torso, weighing 12.5 stone, which is like a super middle today limit. Sayers, however, was undaunted, and in January 1856, a convincing victory raised him to a new level. Sayers' next two fights were with Aaron Jones. In the early months of 1857, it was in the early months of 1857. The first contest ended in a draw after 62 rounds of fighting, but Sayers won the subsequent bout on 10th of February 1857. According to the boxing chronicler Fred Henning, this battle brought a plucky Brighton boy still nearer to the coveted title, and it was evident that given away weight made very little matter to him, and proved by the conquering of the two heavyweights that he must have some chance of winning the championship. So his friends were determined that he should have a try, and the opportunity offered itself. So, fights for the championship. At this time, there was no undisputed champion of England amongst the heavier fighters. Harry Broom, who had won the title in 1851 against William the Tipton Slasher Perry, defended it against Harry Orme, and in 1853 had forfeited and arranged a rematch with William the Tipton Slasher Perry, and had written to an editor about his retirement, the Bell's Life in London, it was called, in August 1853, that he intimated his intention of retiring from the prize ring. So basically, he told them, as you're going to retire. So in 1855, fight supporters commissioned a new championship bout, and the previous one having gone astray some way. So the subscription was raised to £100, and a Bond Street jeweller was asked to make a new bout. At this date, there were thought to be 5 possible contenders for the championship: William Perry, but he's retired, Harry Broom, Harry Orme, Tom Paddock, and Aaron Jones. William Perry claimed the title for himself and attempted to set up fights with Aaron Jones, Tom Paddock, Aaron Jones in 1856. However, he forfeited to him rather than fight him. So he's picking who he wants, really, by the looks of it, but which gave the opportunity to Sayers to fight for the championship. On 3rd of March 1857, the articles for the fight between Sayers and the Tipton Slasher were signed. The fight was to be for £100 per side plus a new championship bout. According to the chroniclers of the prize ring, that is. So many thought it was a wild man, revolutionary idea to match a 10 stone 10 or 10 and a half sometimes, but 10 stone 10 it's saying here, man, to a 5'8", a man of 5'8" against a 14 stoner of 6 foot. So again, they're saying it's a bit of a mismatch. And the later minds of the later, yeah. So mind you, no, but was no, by means as not a good opponent. But the Championship of England, but for the Championship of England, it was, yeah. So it's written a bit weirdly. So who had won? He had won his title by fighting Perry and was so confident of winning. They're talking about Sayers here. He sold his pub on the Spoon Lane, West Bromwich, and staked proceeds on himself on 6-4 odds. However, although confident of winning, he did. Oh, this is talking about Perry. He was so confident of winning, he sold his pub in Spon Lane, West Bromwich, and staked the proceeds on himself to 6-4 odds. However, although confident of winning, he did not underestimate Sayers, and he trained hard to fight for the fight. This fight, Perry's final one, he said here, took place on June the 16th, 1857, on the Isle of Grain. During the fight, Sayers demonstrated his ring craft as he moved swiftly, dodging the slasher's heaviest punches. According to the eyewitness report, he was dodging his punches, etc. Perry's tactics were at fault by some eyewitness. Despite being slower on his feet, he tried to force the pace of the fight instead of fighting defensively, using his powers as a counter hitter or counter puncher. In the end, Sayers won convincingly in a victory over 10 rounds, the fight lasting 1 hour and 42 minutes. So you've got the championship defences. He had 4 of them. Sayers' first fight as a champion was with Bill Benjamin on the Isle of Grain on the 5th of January 1858. According to the sports paper The Bell's Life in London, Benjamin's real name was William Bang, and he was a complete novice at prize fighting. Sayers won easily after 3 rounds of fighting, which took just 6.5 minutes. On the 16th of June 1858, Sayers took on and beat the experienced fighter Tom Paddock from Canvey Island. In the 21st round, Sayers, noting that the exhausted Paddock could hardly see and was incapable of defending himself, shook his opponent by the hand and led him back to his corner, prompting Paddock's seconds to throw in the sponge. So he showing some humanity, not sort of wanting to fight to the death. He escorted him back to his corner because he had enough, rather than going and totally finishing him off. So on April 5th, 1859, Sayers fought a rematch with a much improved Bill Benjamin. Sayers came out on top, defeating his opponent in 11 rounds. On the 20th of September 1859, a fight took place with the Birmingham-based Bob Brettle. The contest differed from Sayers' recent fights in that Brettle was a slightly lighter than lighter man. In the 7th round, Brettel dislocated his shoulder and so is unable to continue, giving victory and £600 stake money to Sayers. So 1859, Sayers accepts the challenge. Yeah, they got the date right here. To John Camel C. Heenan, the Benicia boy, the Bay boy. So a little bit of a rundown on that. So by this time, prize fighting was in utter disrepute and virtually ignored by everyone outside the ranks of the fancy, as the followers of boxing were known in them days. Yet the Sayer-Heenan's fight caught the public imagination on both sides of the Atlantic. In other words, in the Times, this challenge has led to an amount of attention being bestowed on the prize ring, which it has never received before. While in America, the paper, the New York Clipper, observed that what we do, or where we be, the fight is the topic engrosses all attention. So the efforts of a number of concerned citizens to have the illegal event prevented come to nothing, and the battle took place at Farnborough in Hampshire on the morning of Tuesday, 17th of April 1860. Transport from London, the venue was provided by South Western Railways. According to the eyewitnesses, several members of the Parliament were present, and among the nobility and the gentry, besides the noble owner of the property, we were shown the Duke of Sutherland, the Marquess of Stafford, and Colonel Peel. So all this gentry are there, and it's a legal fight. So quite something there. So there were 2,000 persons in the crowd, and there were many of the London celebrities in the literary and artistic and sporting world. Sayers' seconds for the fight were Henry Brunton and Jimmy Walsh, and whilst Heenan was attended by Jack MacDonald and Jim Cusick. It was on the face of it an equal contest. Sayers was conceding 40 pounds in weight and 5 inches in height and 8 years of age. Heenan won the toss for the corners and placed himself at the advantage with his back to the sun. At about 7:30 in the morning, the contest started. 7:30 in the morning. According to one report, Heenan had the better of the opening rounds, knocking down Sayers in the 3rd, 4th. To make matters worse, Sayers' right arm was damaged in the 6th. So when he'd gone down, that would have been end of the round as well. So his arm was damaged. He had to fight with one-handed from the 6th onwards. He had to fight one-handed for most of the ferocious contests, and he went on for more than 2 hours. However, the next round, one reporter called a fine specimen of a stratagem and skill. Sayers stuck several blows around and on Heenan's right eye, which had effect of closing the remainder of the fight, his eye. So in the 37th round, the fight descended into chaos when Heenan held Sayers around the neck. There's a famous picture, and the ropes were let down and the crowd invaded the ring, and also become clear to the police were in the vicinity keen to stop the proceedings. The referee, having been forced from his post, tried to bring the contest to an end, but the ring was reformed and 5 more rounds fought before the referee could finally end the contest. The fight was finally declared a draw. So yeah, but hostilities continued, and some weeks outside the ring, the American camp claiming that Heenan had been cheated of his victory, and the British insisting that Sayers had been on top. According to Ian Manson, a careful study of newspaper reports of the fight and subsequent controversy leaves little doubt that Heenan was on the verge of victory when the action was stopped. Others say the match was a draw. However, according to Alan Wright's book, Tom Sayers, The Last Great Bare Knuckle Champion, that book, it says in that Heenan's attempted strangling of Sayers did not stop the fight, nor did the subsequent invasion of the ring by Sayers' supporters. The account says that the order was nearly restored in the ring, repitched yards away. The fight continued for 4 or 5 rounds, with neither man being able to box proficiently. When the police spotted at the edge of the field, the entire throng, including fighters, made a bolt for it, and the fight ended. So that's a different story, slightly different. The fight stirred up considerable public interest. According to one newspaper, were filled with frenzied denunciations. Parliament angrily discussed the question. It's quite Palmerston. Was quoted. Well, Henry John Temple, 3rd Viscount of Palmerston, was quoted with every sign of satisfactory. The French journalist who saw in the contest a type of national character for indomitable perseverance in determined effort. So again, they're impressed. Differences between the two men were finally patched up, and both were awarded specially made championship belt at the Alhambra Theatre in London on May 30th, 1960. The tour of England, Ireland, Scotland, which they undertook together, has, however, was only a partial success. On June 4th, the fighters performed an exhibition bout at the Free Trade Hall. So there's that. I mean, after the Seaman fight in 1860, Tom Sayers never fought again. Public subscription was raised for him after the fight, and he received a sum of £3,000, 3,000 whatever it was, not enough to fund a comfortable retirement. With 3,000, this money was safely invested, and following the advice of John Gideon, in autumn 1860, Sayers was engaged by the American Circus Company, Howes and Cushing, at reported age of wage, should I say, of £55 a week plus expenses. That's what he's getting in a circus. In October 1861, it was announced that Sayers had purchased the circuses of Howes and Cushing, as well as Jem Mears' Great American Circus. Sayers' circus toured Britain in 1862, but was sold off by auction in November 1862. Sayers' marriage had broken down in the mid-1850s, after which time his 2 children had been living with a married woman called Charlotte. However, in early 1863, his relationship became to an acrimonious end as the couple appeared in the Clerkenwell Police Court, where Sayers accused Charlotte of breaking his windows and Charlotte accused him of breaking her furniture and throwing her out. The auction of the circus in 1862 did not end Sayers' involvement with the circus business, as in November 1863 it was reported that Tom Sayers and the company would be putting on a combined performance with Howe's American Circus. So we've got another little bit here. So the bout was Singers and Howe's last prize fight. However, he made one last appearance in the prize ring when, on December the 10th, 1863, he was one of Heenan's seconds when the American returned to England to fight the champion Tom King. Heenan had trained for the fight by his countryman Jack MacDonald, with the assistance of Heenan's brother James. According to his own account, though, James MacDonald only found out that Sayers would appear as his assistant on the morning of the fight. So only found out on the morning of the fight that Sayers was going to be in his corner, having been told that James Heenan would be fulfilling that role. Sayers' appearance was explained as confirming to the etiquette of the profession. It was also speculated that Heenan's party may have hoped that Sayers' prestige would scatter dismay in the ranks of the King followers. So a bit of sort of psychology going on there. However, it was clear from the appearance at the fight that Sayers was unwell and he was unable to assist Heenan, so he didn't end up going in his corner. So it could have been a bit of skullduggery, psychology going on, or it could have been that. Heenan lost that fight. Sayers had bet heavily on Heenan, losing hundreds of pounds. In January 1864, legal proceedings were initiated against the fighters, seconds and prominent participants in the prize fight. The proceedings concluded in April with the chief participants having to lodge £100 surety with the court in case of further court action. In Liverpool on 25th and 26th of January 1864, Myers American Circus was hired by John C. Heenan, who invited Sayers to recreate the Great Battle of Farnborough. So they recreated their battle of 1860 in 1864, like a sort of play. Reported that Sayers was promoting a benefit evening for the great old boxer Jem Mace, hiring the Standard Theatre at Shoreditch for the occasion. So his illness and death, as a lot of these fighters, they suffered in his days. And say a lot of them used to be drinkers because it was a lot cleaner than the water, even having drinking in corners even when they were fighting. But again, I digress. So on December 1864, Sayers' appearance in the betting ring together with John Heenan, at the Croydon steeplechase meeting. Sayers was described as being haggard, thin and wretched, so he looked quite ill. In February 1865, Sporting Life reported that he was seriously ill and confined to his house in Camden Town. A medical examination revealed him to be showing symptoms of consumption aggravated by diabetes. It was also reported that Heenan had visited him and spent some time in cheering up him, his great opponent for Farnborough, which is him. So on April 1865, Sayers was well enough to make a visit to Brighton, appearing robust and strong, but by August that same year, 1865, while staying with his sister, it became clear that the disease in his lungs meant he would not survive the weeks. So, his last permanent address was in 1860 to 1864, was 51 Camden Town, 51 Camden Street in Camden Town. He died at 257 Camden High Street on 8th of November 1865 in the presence of his father and two children, and his funeral a week later attracted 100,000 people, it says here, into Camden Town. According to Spectator magazine, the crowd that accompanied the coffin stretched for more than 2 miles in length, and Bear was drawn by 4 stable plumed horses. Sayers' dog sitting alone in the pony cart. Misfortune pursued him beyond the grave. His estranged but not divorced wife, who now had 3 sons by the man from who she had left him, went to court to disinherit her 2 children by Sayers. So the parents' subsequent marriage had not changed their legal status, and the judge ruled that while they were certainly illegitimate, what they call legitimate at the time, it could not be proved that Sayers was not the father of the wife's other 3 children. These must therefore be regarded as legitimate and entitled to inherit his estate. So Tom Sayers was buried at Highgate Cemetery, like I said earlier, marble stone, and there's the work of Morton Edwards, the marble tomb, guarded by the stone of the image of his mastiff called Lion, who was chief mourner at his funeral. So had a a figure of his dog on his grave, and the house in Camden where he died now was an English Heritage blue plaque. So I mean, he ended up with 12 wins, 1 loss against Nat Langham and 3 draws. So I mean, he beat his first opponent was Abe Crouch win, second opponent was Dan Collins, a draw, and then Dan Collins a win after that. His third fight, his fourth fight was Jack Grant, a win. His fifth fight was Jack Martin. His sixth fight was Nat Langham, loss. So his seventh fight was George Sims. His eighth fight was Harry Paulson, both them wins. His ninth fight was Aaron Jones, a draw. His 10th fight was a win against Aaron Jones. His 11th fight was a win against Bill Perry, Tipton Slasher, a win. His 12th fight was a win against Bill Benjamin. His 13th fight was a win against Tom Paddock. His 14th fight was a win against Bill Benjamin. His 15th fight was a win against Bob Brettle. And his 16th fight, as we know, his last fight was John C. Heenan, a draw. So, 12 wins, 1 loss and 3 draws out of 16 fights. The ones we know of, obviously. A fictionalised Tom Sayers appeared in a series of weekly adventures penned by a story paper, The Marvel, by omegated press writer Arthur S. Hardy, real name Arthur Joseph Stevens. So, and it was like sort of like a comic thing, a fiction thing of Tom Sayers, a series of weekly adventures penned for the story paper. It was called the story paper. That was the publication. With literary magazines featuring illustrations, text stories aimed toward children and teenagers, also known in Britain as Boyd's Weeklies. Story papers was phenomenally popular before the outbreak of the Second World War. Among the most well-known British story paper was Boy's Own paper, which ran from 1879 to 1967. But yeah, and the fictionalised Tom Sayers character in this publication this was in the first decade of the 20th century. Hardy versions of Sayers was an Edwardian actor-manager touring Britain, theatres and music halls with staged recreations of his boxing triumphs in a career move very loosely based on the real Sayers circus venture. This romanticised figure was revived and further developed as a central character in The Kingdom of Bones, a 2007 novel by Stephen Gallagher. But Sayers appears in George du Maurier's first novel, Peter Ibbotson Part 2. Detailed account of the Sayers Heenan fight appears on Hugh Walpole's The Fortress. So yeah, it's his character or spirit, if you like, lived on, with cartoonists like George Lewis Palmera Buson du Maurier, and novel writers. So yeah, I mean, Chris Burriam, Tom. There's quite a few different writings, and I won't go through them. So again, yeah, that's the second part of the pugilistic fighter 2. Second part, Tom Sayers. There'll probably be more to come on Tom Sayers. Bang.